So keep in mind that what we've been talking about is regular verbs and only AR verbs. So we will talk about ER, IR coming up, but only regular verbs, the pattern follows, basically. We always have to know our pronouns, because if we don't, then obviously we don't know how to use a box. So on the singular side of the box, we have yo, tú, él, ella, usted. First box can only be for the yo form. Second box can only be for the tú form. Anything else that's singular is going to be on the bottom. So that is lumped together when we look at verbs. On the plural side, we have nosotros, or anybody, and I. We don't use vosotros. And then we have the ellos, ellas, ustedes, or anything that is plural that's not including myself. The top box is the only one we use other than anything else plural on the plural side. So when you're conjugating verbs, you can automatically rule out half the box. If it's singular, rule out the plural side. If it's plural, rule out the singular side. Alright, so every verb has two parts. The stem part is where some people don't pay attention to carefully and miss a letter, and then they miss the whole thing. So the stem, all it is once you drop the AR, then you are left over with the stem. Please make sure that you have every single letter. I'm giving you a verb bank to help you spell the word, so make sure that you have all the letters there. One letter can mess everything up. So all these stems, these are some verbs that are not on our list, but any AR verb we can conjugate by taking away the AR and then adding our correct endings that agree with the subject to the stem of the verb. So to form present tense, we look at our endings, take away the AR, and then attach these to the stem. O, as, a, amos, an. If you remember the little song that we played. Maybe that stuck in your head, maybe you didn't. Otherwise, you just have to memorize the box here. Once you do, though, it applies to any verb that ends in AR. That's a regular verb. I'll let you know about irregular verbs coming out. They're a little bit different. So, for example, we have hablar. Hablar is to speak or talk, and so that is the stem with an AR attached to it. We take it away, and then we add our endings. Hablo means what? I speak. Hablar means to speak. Hablo, I speak. Hablas is only you informal speak. Habla is anyone else that singular speaks. What's hablamos? We speak, and then hablan is anyone else speaks. So if I'm not included, you use the bottom right. So the bottom two are the ones that you do end up using the most, because those are the ones that have more options. Estudiar, you take away the AR, add your endings, and then you have the conjugated forms of the verb, which are the forms that agree with the subject. So you can never have a verb that ends in AR unless it follows another verb, which we'll get to at the end here. Okay? And so nadar, take away the AR, add your endings, same thing of conjugated forms of the verb. Nadar is the infinitive form. You don't need to know necessarily the terminology, but I do want you to be familiar with nadar is the unconjugated form, the infinitive form, and then excuse me, the forms in the box are the conjugated forms that agree with your subject. Okay? So all of this is in the present tense, and that means that we can technically do this in different ways. But I study Spanish. You don't technically need the yo form because it's already implied there. But it can mean I do study Spanish or I am studying Spanish. We will later on talk about present progressive, which is explicitly saying I am studying right this second. If you want to emphasize that, then we have to use present progressive. For now, know that estudio can mean any three of these things. Okay, so just for different emphasis there, and then action and progress. So, but we can always keep it simple just by saying I study. No big deal. Present tense. Okay. All right, so other verbs we have plenty of. Again, if they're on our list, great. If they're not on our list, then we can still conjugate them, but we are not responsible for their meanings. Remember, again, on my website, I put your 38 verbs that you are responsible for and ways to remember them. There's the green PowerPoint on my website to help you with those. And you remember you have the Quizlet as well, link on my website for that. All right, so practicar is to practice, to cognate. And cantar, ayudar, trabajar, just extra verbs there. I thought it said that. There's the right forms. Hablar, how do we conjugate it? Okay. For mi amigo y yo.
Hablo, or hablamos.
Right, because it's my friend and I speaking, so it would be plural, and I am included, so it'd be the top box. Okay, el estudiante. Habla. Good. For trabajar, mi padre. Trabaja. What does it mean? He works. Good. My father works. Does it matter that it's my father? No, it matters that father is one singular person, so don't get confused by what's in front of it.
What about if it's mi familia? Is it still one?
My family is still talking about family, one singular family. Always look at the noun and go back to what we learned from the very beginning. Tell if it's feminine, masculine, singular, plural. Although for verbs, you don't have to worry about gender. Okay. What about unos amigos? Trabajan. Good. And this is a good review. What's unos mean? Now, it does go, good. It does go with the they conjugation, but it's some. Some friends work, trabajan. Good. All right. For cocinar, for the to form. Cocinas, what does that mean? You cook. You informal cook. What about ella cocina, she cooks. Okay. Bailar. Elena y Jose bailan, they dance. Laura y yo bailamos, we dance. Laura and I. Okay, so don't get those two confused. We haven't done this verb, saltar is to jump, but if we wanted to conjugate it, all we do is drop the AR, add an O for the yo form, salto, and then quien is just, if it's asking about who, normally quien is for anybody singular, quienes is for anybody plural. We didn't talk about that too much, but a lot of times you can ask about one singular person or plural people, which again are the bottom two boxes that we use the most. Okay, vosotros we're not going to worry about, but what are we going to substitute if we have somebody and you informal? We would substitute it with ustedes, which would be buscan. Good. All right, for comprar, mis amigos. Okay, doesn't matter that they're my friends. It matters that friends are plural, so compran. And then Ramon y tú. Okay, normally you would go to the vosotros form, so in this case we're going to not use the ice, and we're going to use the an instead and use ustedes instead. Okay. All right, a few more. La clase. Canta, good. Can we tell that this word is a exception word? It ends in an E, so it looks masculine, but it's feminine, and we know that because of the article. So just all the things that we've been working on kind of coming together should make sense. The girl, female students, but we don't have to worry about gender with verbs, so it's just plural students, cantan. Okay. Preguntar, that's if you ask plural people, quien is singular, quienes is plural. Yo form, I ask, would be pregunto. Good. Tocar. Now, if you have a long subject, do you care about anything that's after the de? It's extra information. It does not matter. What are we looking at? Profesores. Is it singular or plural? Plural. So all we have to do is do the plural conjugation because I am not included with the teachers or professors. Just the usted form by itself is singular, and so bottom box would be toca. Good. All right. If we were to translate sentences just focusing on the verb, I answer would be contesto. She buys or she is buying would be what? Ella, just, now in this case, in English, remember, she's is not plural. She is buying. Apostrophe S is either possessive or a contraction for she is. So still just she, ella compra. Okay, don't worry about the rest of the vocab, just focus on the verb for now. Okay, those girls, plural girls, they need would be necesitan, and it would be ellas because it's talking about girls. We work. And we don't even need the nosotros. All we need is trabajamos. Okay. Two, now whenever you is designated, you have to choose the right one. If it's not designated, then you can pick. We have you singular, you plural. We have 5 yous. We have two, usted, vosotros, vosotras that we don't count, and then the ustedes, which is you plural, you all. But the two, singular, second box can only be buscas. And then you guys, you plural, would be ustedes. Normally, if we're using the informal one, it would be vosotros, but we're not doing that one, so we would always substitute with ustedes. Okay? All right. Anybody knows, well, we haven't had that verb, so never mind on that one. Always remember, though, that if we are writing the word he, that it needs an accent. You're not going to have to do that today on the quiz, but it's always good to remember, because a lot of people were confused, and it's good to recognize from your subjects. El with an accent means he. El without an accent means the. Okay? All right, questions we will talk about in a minute here. You can use questions with question words or questions without. To cry we don't have on our list. I prepare or I do prepare is still just the same present tense conjugation. We are studying, same thing, we study would be estudiamos. And they danced. Since it doesn't have a gender, we just go with ellos. And then bailan. All right. So sometimes we'll have 2 verbs in a row. The rule is that if they're back to back, then you're going to conjugate the first verb. Do not ever conjugate the second verb if it's back to back. Leaving it in its infinitive form just means leaving the AR on it. It means that you don't do anything to it. Okay. So if they're back to back, you take off the ending and replace with the correct conjugation for the first verb, because that means that that person is doing that action. If there's one immediately following, that means there's nothing in between. They're back to back in a row. There's no commas, there's no ands, there's nothing to go in between them. Then you leave it in its original form, leave it with an AR. No one's doing that action. So for example, oh, the rule is always, always, always. See my lovely, beautiful yellow sign above the board? That's to remind you. Always, 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 always conjugate the verb unless it's 2 in a row. Nothing in between. Back to back, no commas. Immediately following each other. Okay? So, a lot of verbs that are first verbs that commonly can lead to a second verb is I need to cook. I wish to dance. I hope to swim. Or whatever. So, for this, the first one. Yo what? Necesito. Okay? Look at the second verb, that the second verb there is not conjugated. What does that mean? I need to study. If you look at the actual verb, the first one is conjugated because I need, agrees with you, but to study, is anybody actually studying in that sentence? Is anybody actually studying though? Okay. Nobody's actually studying, so that verb is not conjugated. Nobody's doing that action. I just need to. Am I actually doing it? That's the question I ask myself every time when I look at quizzes. The second verb there, the verb desear, to agree with the to form, would be? Tú necesitas. You need to pass. To pass, notice anything with an AR is always to something. Okay? And nosotros esperamos, conjugate the verb, we hope to, and then the verb to love, would we conjugate it? Nope, you would just leave it in its infinitive form because this means to love. Okay? All right, let's try a couple more. Usted no. Does it matter if I add a no? Absolutely not. It just makes the sentence negative. You don't need to buy books. So the first verb is conjugated, but what if you have the second verb? Oops, apologize. What if you have the second verb there after a verb that's already conjugated? You just write the verb. So what's to buy? Comprar with an AR attached to it because we want to buy. Nobody's actually doing it. Now for the next example there, Maria y tú, we've got two verbs. The first verb always gets conjugated, so drop your AR and put desean, and then this would stay in the original infinitive form. What do they wish to do? To borrow my book. Okay. And last one here. There's an and in between. What does that mean? You do conjugate both of them because what does the sentence say? I sing and dance. I do this action and I do this action. It's not back to back. It's not I sing to dance. Doesn't make any sense. Does everybody understand the difference here? Okay, good. All right. And one last thing, making questions. We've seen this, and so if you see it on your quiz with a question, just know basically that all you're doing is switching your verb and your subject. Or all you have to do is add a no afterwards. Remember this question we had on a Kahoot a little while ago, and I told you guys we would be coming up to talk about it? So, if taking a statement, you study Spanish, but you want to ask somebody, do you study Spanish? In English, we have to add the do you. In Spanish, all you do is if you put the subject second and the verb first, flip those two, then all you have to do is you're literally asking somebody, do you study Spanish? Okay. So that's making simple questions. There's more complicated ways that you can basically just add the word verdad or a upside down question mark no afterwards and it makes it into a question, but we're not going to worry about that. All we're doing is if we have a verb and a subject, we're just flipping those two so that we can make it into a question. Does Alejandro need, and you have to read it backwards, does Alejandro need school materials? Okay. Now, every now and then, we'll end up with two verbs, and so I'm going to give you two options. If we have the sentence, wrong button, you what? What does this mean? You need to buy books. Now, if I want to ask you, we have one verb, two verbs. You can either, I think it's easier to keep both verbs together and then leave your subject and just flip those two. But if you want to, you always can split up your verbs, but notice what happens here at the end. It's still not conjugated because we're still asking, do you need, that's conjugated, to buy, so to buy here is not conjugated because it's still saying to buy. So do you need to buy, second verb is still not conjugated if you decide to switch that. I always say it's better to keep it together so you don't forget to not conjugate the second one. So this is your format for your quiz and for your test. The verbs will be in English because I want you to not only know the o, as, a, amos, an. That's easy. All you have to do is take away the AR, which some people did not do on our first quiz. That was very disappointing. So take away the AR, add your endings, but you have to know your verbs in English. So I am going to give you the verb bank, so please, please, please be careful in spelling your verbs correctly. Okay? So you do have this presentation, not the whole presentation, but if you want it, I can put it on my website. I'll also put a video up of this on YouTube, and I'll put a link on my website as well. But on Schoology, you have the second verb in a row and questions intro, so the 2 verbs in a row kind of note if you just want to have those. I put those on Schoology for you to go back and refer to, since I didn't ask you to technically write anything down. So we'll come back and talk more about the 2 verbs in a row here coming up, but you have this in your Schoology account. Okay. All right, now I've got 2 Kahoots for us to play, and then we can take the quiz. We can decide which to do.